Welcome to a new episode of Education Exchange, the most important and most popular program on TV as far as education is concerned. We have been on the air for, is it 28, Mike, or 29 years now? 29. 29 years, thanks to the efforts of John Carhart and Michael Peterson, and to the public access TV, and before that to the Iowa City Public Library. And now we add a third partner, which is the city of Iowa City, who are welcoming our show on their screen at least twice a week. In this new episode, we are welcoming visionary leaders in our district. Matt Degner is our assistant superintendent for secondary school in the Iowa City Community School District. And welcome to our show. On my right-hand side here is Dr. Raj Degner, our co-host, and we are going to be running a conversation with you. But before we start, I just want to make sure that you receive our congratulations for the success of the new pathways that started to be implemented in our classrooms in Iowa City Schools. And in particular, when it comes to agricultural education. And this is definitely a success, given the fact that we live in a state that is basically a farm state. And we are the best, the very best of the whole world. And for many, many years, we haven't had a methodical, systematized program to teach agriculture. And thanks to you that you promoted this with the consensus of the community. And we are very happy that this has happened. I think you have some questions about schools.
Yeah, and that regards to sort of, which schools are involved in this, in the RAG program, and where it's heading, in what direction.
Yeah. First of all, I just say thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on the show here with you folks, and always a great experience to share some of our work and try to inform a broader base of people, some of the things going on in the school district. And agricultural education has been a new topic for us and something that we've been working on. While it's relatively new, we've been working on it for a period of time. And I think what we found through that process is we have a large base of community support for that. As Hani alluded to, being in Iowa and how many jobs and how much of our economy is related back to that segment of industry is definitely critical, and it's definitely critical that our students are exposed to those opportunities and have the opportunity to pursue that if they desire. So to the schools, we'll plan on offering a section of Ag Ed at each of the 3 comprehensive high schools. We hope to post actually and hire a teacher here in the next few weeks. That's a posting we'll be putting up and be in search of an Ag Ed teacher, and that first Ag Ed teacher will be shared between all 3 high schools to try to build some ground level support for the program and inspire student interest into that particular field. It's one of the 6 areas of career technical education. It's a strand that in Iowa City we didn't offer. We'd offered 4 other strands, and this was now a 5th opportunity for us. So state requires we do 4, so this is a kind of an above and beyond opportunity for us that we're really excited about and think that we have great potential for. Looking at agriculture in some different ways, I think that's going to be the important part to kind of redefine maybe people's mindset about what agriculture ed is. Growing up in a small town and teaching in a small school district, FFA and Ag Ed looked different than I think what maybe some people's mindset around that could have around some preconceived notions with that field.
And of course, we're happy that you have already paved the way for the curriculum and staffing facility Are there designated classrooms?
Oh, sure.
Here?
Kind of space and facilities wise, yeah. We've talked some about that, and part of that will be work through a process with the teacher we hire in this introduction course. You know, having a classroom obviously committed to that space is going to be critical. But then from there, we need to define kind of what that lab component looks like and how that FFA extension opportunity looks, and that'll be something we work through with that teacher definitely. But we know we're going to need to have space considerations, and we're going to need to have some facility considerations. You know, whether it might be a greenhouse or something to that effect. We haven't necessarily determined which or all campuses may or may not have something like that, but that's why we need to get somebody on board and kind of carrying the flag for the program to say, this is what we need, or this is what the students are asking for, and what works for us in Iowa City to make that a successful program.
On a personal note, you and I worked together through two committees, as far as I remember. The first committee was the middle school exploration committee, and we had a lot of meetings in this respect, and a lot of studies, a lot of visits and reports. Is there any, I won't say hope, but is there any possibility, potential for this middle school approach to be implemented in the Iowa City Community School District?
That's something that comes up every once in a while, Hani, about looking at the middle school philosophy. And, right now our facilities are somewhat driving, how we're delivering that junior high or middle school program based on the fact of capacity for 7th and 8th grade students and the amount of students we can serve in those 3 comprehensive junior highs in North Central, Northwest, and Southeast. And, but I think as the district starts conversations around another 10-year facility master plan and what that looks like, we see some different things that probably need to be part of a larger conversation about what we believe about what junior high should look like, or what the middle school experience should look like. What do we believe about preschool, in the district, and is preschool an increased need for us that we need to consider, because then that would obviously affect space in our elementary campuses that may lead to some of that junior high conversation as well. Being a former junior high principal, I think it's extremely difficult sometimes with only 2 years with a set of students and trying to build relationships, make them feel comfortable. It's an awkward time. First of all, I always say I don't think too many people would go back and say, yeah, I'd like to do junior high again. So it's just it's a sensitive time in kids' lives, and in parents too, as their kids are growing and changing, becoming young adults, and some of those things. So I think trying to consider all of those factors and facets, it would be nice to have an opportunity for longer opportunity with a group of students, to build relationships and to help them grow and become more confident in what they may or may not want to pursue. So I think it's definitely something to consider. I think that facilities component is a big part of that conversation and how we explore that. We do have, I believe, really successful junior highs right now with our current setup and what they're able to do in maximizing that experience for 2 years. But of course, we're always looking for improvement efforts to try to do better.
And the second interaction between you and me professionally was through the committee that was exploring the curriculum for the LGBTQ population in our schools. And your role was extremely positive in this respect. Can you update our audience, our viewers, of anything new in this respect?
Sure. It's kind of an interesting topic because we conducted interviews for a director of equity position today. We had some candidates in and talked to them, and just to kind of maybe give a broad picture of where equity is at in the district just for a few moments. Kingsley Botchway, our former director of equity and engagement, left to take on a human resources role in Waterloo, and so we're missing Kingsley a lot right now. So Kingsley, if you're watching, hello. We hope you're doing well. But what Kingsley had done is really grown that position into a large arena, and it's a teaching and learning job, because equity should lay over everything we do in all parts of the organization, and then also kind of on the compliance and protection of rights for folks role as well. And so today, the person we really talk to is probably more on that compliance, protecting our folks, making sure that we create a safe and welcoming environment for our kids and people of diverse backgrounds. And so with the LGBTQ work, that committee Kingsley was facilitating and met several times. We had been part of that work.
University.
Yep, with the university group through our staff and climate survey. And then, so the outcomes of that work, are something that we're working to try to implement this year. And so there's a curriculum component to that. There's a, kind of
The recommendation of the public policy.
Yeah, from the public policy group. Yep. And so, that's been presented to the board. There's some draft guidelines that we'll eventually take to the board to talk about and ask them for, a resolution in support, which we anticipate, our community's been very responsive to that and sees it as the right thing to do. And so we're continuing to engage with that group and kind of to circle back to where I started this conversation. Laura Cottrell, who's the principal at Northwest Junior High, is now our director of cultural responsiveness, and so she's really been working and facilitating that group in Kingsley's absence, and we'll be bringing that work here forward towards the turn of the year for the board to look at and to hopefully move on. So we feel good about that. We feel like it creates the right climate and culture for not only our staff but our students, and make sure that we're setting up some appropriate parameters on how we a bright student should have and expect that we should be delivering on.
In the meantime, when you are thinking of exploration of new pathways, we have noticed during the last couple of weeks, during the election campaign, among all the agendas that were proposed by the candidates from all walks of life along the political spectrum, there is more or less consensus on the necessity of empowering the technical and not the technological, but the technical and the vocational training in high schools. And a couple of days ago, I accidentally met with one of my students, and she told me that she's doing now a welding course in Kirkwood, and she said, I enjoyed it very much. I wish I had this in high school. I could have now made big money.
Right.
So welding and home construction and auto repair and painting and all that are very essential for the vocational training in high school. How far did you go in implementing these programs?
Sure. I think the challenge that we were trying to address and do a better job of is really looking at articulation of those programs. And so, the district's talked a lot about the Kirkwood Regional Center and the opportunities we have out there, and, the cost sharing on equipment and the economy we can create from students of multiple districts, being engaged in a class that would cost us staffing considerations at the home school. And those are great opportunities, but those are really kind of back-end experiences for students, and we need to do a better job of introducing students into those fields on our campuses early on. And so today, after we were done with the HR interviews, we had a great conversation around junior high electives. A group of us met and started talking about what do our junior high electives look like, and how do we give students multiple touch points into multiple areas, and career and technical education was a large part of that conversation, because there's so many different diverse areas that kids may or may not be interested in, but if we don't expose them to them, they don't know. It's just like your student here you're talking about with the welding. She had some kind of a touch point of that during K-12, maybe she would have pursued that. So how do we do that in junior high? And then in our high schools, I think a good example of an opportunity we maximized is on City High's campus. We've started the ACE program. It's architecture, construction, and engineering. And those students in 9th and 10th grade can take that class with an instructor of ours, and they do some small projects on the campus. They learn skills in each of those 3 areas. And then if that's something they want to further pursue, then they can take that experience at the Kirkwood Regional Center and pursue that pathway fully. So I think for us, it's about how do we articulate front-end experiences to create exposure somewhat of an in-depth experience, and then they can, you know, pursue something at a higher level like the regional center or even at the University of Iowa if it's something they decide is a field of interest for them. So that's our challenge when we talk pathways, is trying to articulate for kids how that looks, and then also helping them identify what you might be passionate about, you know, what the path for that is, because I think too often students get asked the question, what are you going to do after high school? Well, I'm going to go to college. Well, what are you going to do in college, right? And what's that look like for them? And we don't do a good job of answering that question. They'd have a better answer if we had helped them be better informed. So I think that's the part of the problem we need to own, and that's why I think that pathway work is so critical, that if we can put a job and a salary in the path of education, you know, that they need to have to be successful, that sets them up for long-term success and helps parents be better informed and helping their kids make their decisions.
During this planning process, are you reaching out to experts such as trade unions, employers, business, small business, or large business, of what they need their employee to know, or what do they need their worker to be skilled at?
I think the two best examples we could talk through would be one with ag, how we ran the agricultural steering committee. We invited in several local partners from the community that had been involved in the field of agriculture, and kind of talked to them about what they're seeing and what their needs and what the trends are for students, which helped, I think, change the mindset of that group around ag ed when I talked about that a little bit earlier. So that was a very valuable process for us that I think we can learn and grow from in our other areas. The second point I would talk about is probably the work with the Iowa City Area Development Group. And we talked about ICAD is kind of their little check-in. Mark Nolte and Kate Moreland we work pretty closely with. And through a group we're involved with through Grant Wood, the regional planning partnership in the area of career and technical education, they are bringing kind of those industry needs to the table and saying, this is what industry is saying, and this is the skill gap. And really what we find out is that most times it's not the technical skills the kids need, it's the soft skills, right? It's those things like creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking. Those are the skills that our students need to be leaving with that'll help them be successful in whatever path they end up choosing for themselves. And so that's been an interesting conversation. And again, I think when we get into specific employment fields, yes, we can talk some more about technical skills, but we need to make sure those other skills are something that all of our students are getting, because they're all going to need that to be successful.
I know that Dr. Peck wanted to talk to you about the life skills. We have a couple of minutes to cover that after my last question. Last question is how flexible you are when it comes to the 7-period schedule in high school as well as in other schools. I mean, this looks to me like sacred, like untouchable. When I taught for many years, more than 20 years in alternative education, we had the liberty to manipulate the schedules to our needs. In other words, we did block segmentation, empty part, unite a couple of classes together. How flexible you are as the chief administrator of schools. Maybe out of this 7, if you can diminish the period from 50 minutes to 40 minutes, or 40, even 40 to 43 minutes, you can find a space to add another period for vocational, technical, fun things.
Sure. So I think where we're trying to capitalize on that a little bit is in our 7-period days at the high schools, we've created like an advisory time. At City High they call it Little Hawk time, at West High it's called A&T. And during that time there's some enrichment built in, there's time for students to access teachers. So that creates some flexibility, but some of those enrichment opportunities are just limited based on the challenge to prepare something new and provide a new experience for students. But that's one opportunity we're trying to look at that. Part of the challenge, and it's nobody's fault, but it's in our negotiated agreement with our association, our teachers association. And so Junior high teachers are contracted for 6 of 8 periods, and then high school teachers are contracted for 5 to 7. I think if you talk to the high school administrators and the high school teachers, they feel like that 50 minutes is an important chunk of time as far as attention span for high school students, that they can keep their attention through that. And that, you know, with the junior
research is very divided when it comes to 50 minutes of concentration. I mean, there are a lot of evidence that after 35 minutes, it goes down.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's almost exactly where I was going. So 50 minutes, you know, can we do the same thing for 50 minutes, or does that time period need to look different during that time? And I think that's, you know, where we're evolving, is realizing, you know, it's not necessarily a teacher standing at the front of the room for 50 minutes. It might be some small group instruction. It could be a whole class piece of instruction. But you're right. I mean, the research doesn't necessarily support that adolescents can keep their attention locked for 50 minutes. But I do think that's a little bit where you see the difference with some older students having the longer class periods and the younger ones at the junior high having the shorter class periods too. So I don't think we're opposed to the conversation. I just think it's one that's got multi-facets to it.
Well, in all these complex discussions, it seems like a simplistic issue, you know, life skills. But I think it's necessary. But I think there are some students that don't quite get these kind of final points. So, is there a program that sort of deals with, you know, imparting life skills, like, you know, simple things as balancing the checkbook, or, you know, learning how to fix something, or, you know, cook a meal, or, you know.
Yeah, and there's 21st century skills included in the Iowa core curriculum, which is kind of our guaranteed viable curriculum that we're saying every student should experience by the time they leave the district. And so some of those 21st century skills, well, not some of them, all of them, we have to make sure incorporated along the way somewhere that students have access to those. Now, as far as, you know, can we continue to do better on those, I think that's where we look for opportunity to say, how do we bring out those skills in a more robust fashion? And I think that's part of the challenge. A recent legislative change we've been working through is the financial literacy standards that the state had passed last legislative session, and working them into our current social studies delivery model through government and economics, and trying to figure out how we navigate through that, because that speaks to exactly like what you're talking about, being able to balance a checkbook. You know, what does a mortgage for a home look like? What's an auto loan look like? All of those different components that if you leave K-12 education, you know, do you have the skills to be able to do that? And so, you know, the frustrating side of me says, you know, it came without any funding. It was a mandate for us, you know, to put in, and so we're forced to kind of make it fit into our system, and that's the challenge, right? I mean, but I think schools are good at it. I mean, we've done that all along. We've done that historically, is that as we identify social ills in society, our public institutions, we rely on them to take on a lot of those things, and I think schools have rose to the challenge for that, and I think that's part of the story in public education we need to tell a little bit better, is that they're, you know, when we designed public ed, you know, what were we asking schools to do, and what are we asking schools to do today? So every time we want to talk about schools being a failure or not being good enough, let's look at the list of things and the challenges we've added to that plate, and I think we're successful for doing those. Do we have problems, and do we have holes, and do we have gaps? Of course we do, and we have to continue to get better, but I think those types of things, those are challenges we like to see, right? I mean, we like to be able to say, okay, our kids are not being successful with this when they leave, how can we help be part of the solution to that?
Well, we have a couple of minutes if you have any news for us. If there is part that we overlooked or didn't cover, please, again, you can talk to our viewers about what we are missing. We have about 2 minutes.
Okay.
For you to give a message to all the community.
Sure. I think some of the most exciting work, you know, we really have going on in the district is around that equity piece that we talked about today. And, you know, I think that that is something that we have tried to layer on top of every single decision we make in the school district, and looking at achievement data and achievement gaps, moving that conversation towards access gaps, because we know achievement gaps are a result of access gaps and access to high quality curriculum and access to our best teachers. And so you could take that classroom component of the work, you could take that to the HR perspective, where we look at how are we bringing in more diverse staff to engage with our students, and that the students are seeing positive role models. You can take that to our operational components, where we look at our facility plans and making sure we have equitable learning facilities for all of our students. You know, and today, talking to these equity directors, I think that was a theme we really tried to impress upon them, is that there has to be that equity lens in all parts of the organization. And when we look through that, if we're identifying a part where we don't feel like we're equitable, then that's incumbent upon us to change that and to make sure we're making decisions that are going to be great for all of our kids and not just some of our kids. And that's a system challenge for us, but I think that's something in the Iowa City Community School District we're very committed to doing, to trying to close gaps wherever they may exist, and to trying to provide those equitable outcomes is what we want to get to for everybody, not just talk about it.
Well, thank you. I know that we will be having a chance to meet Chase Remy in another episode, and we are going to talk with him more about the equity issues and hiring process and all that. But thank you for shedding some light about it in your own episode. In conclusion, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
On behalf of Public Access TV, on behalf of our team, on behalf of the community in general, and thank you very, very much for coming today. We are looking forward to see you again, maybe before the end of the year to see what has been accomplished and achieved.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.